Meeting to order. It is 7:01. Please rise and recite the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll turn it over to the city clerk to issue the oath of office.
Running like that.
I, Clayton Shargott, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States, ordinances of the city of Cedar Springs, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of Clayton.
I don't have to repeat all that, right? I can just say I do. Okay, we're good.
Awesome. We'll take a roll call now. Mr. Shargott,
He's here.
Mr. Hogg. Oh. Mr. Marvel is here. Mr. Marty. Ms. Shandell. Mrs. Powell. And Mr. Nixon is absent. I'll take a motion to excuse Mr. Nixon.
I'll make that motion.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Today at the meeting, we have Mrs. Falcon, City Manager, Mr. Moore, City Planner, and Mrs. April, City Clerk. Anybody else that? All right. I will now take a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting, July 1st, 2025.
Motion to approve the minutes.
I'll support that motion.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. 6-0. All right, I will take a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries 6-0. Public comments. Those citizens wishing to speak on agenda and non-agenda items will be allowed a maximum of 4 minutes each to address their concerns. This is the only time during the meeting that citizens are allowed to address the Planning Commission. Please state your name and address for the record if you would like. Is there any members of the public that want to make a comment? Anybody online? All right, we'll move on. Conflicts of interest and excommunication inquiry. Is there any conflicts of interest on the board tonight?
Not me.
Okay. We will move on then. Item 8. We have a public hearing for the master plan. So do I need to open up the public hearing first? Okay, I will now open up the public hearing for the master plan. And we open it up for public comment, right? Okay, is there anybody from the public that wishes to make a comment about the master plan for the public hearing? Okay, yeah. Did everybody have a chance to review the letters and suggestions that were in our packet? Is there anybody online? Okay.
No, we can just open it and then close it at the end. There's no comments.
Okay, there's no comments then. I will close the public hearing for the master plan and open it up for discussion for planning commission members?
You want an introduction of
Yeah.
what we've changed since the last time you've seen it?
Mr. Moore?
I met with, Darla last 2 weeks ago or last week, and we went through the master plan. We made a handful of changes. Most of those changes were just adding additional pictures and graphics and things like that. I don't think that anything that we added to the plan I would consider to be substantive. We didn't adjust the future land use map. We didn't adjust the text. We didn't adjust the goals or objectives at all or anything like that. We're basically just kind of filling it out with some better images, rearranged a few things just to make it flow a little bit better, improve the structure and things like that. Otherwise, there are no changes since the last time you saw this a couple of months ago. So kind of where we are in the process is, so we've been through the whole process, drafted the plan, it's been distributed. We waited the state required 63 days. Now we're here for the public hearing. So this is the planning commission's kind of final blessing on the document. So if you choose to approve it, you would approve it and then recommend approval of the same to the city council. And there is a resolution to that effect included in your packet. So this has to be done by resolution. So obviously we are here we're happy to make any additional adjustments or changes or edits that are requested by the commission. But if there aren't any, then it would be appropriate to adopt the resolution that was included in your packets. And you don't have to read the whole thing. You could just refer to the title. Resolution recommending adoption of the proposed City of Cedar Springs master plan to the city council and constituting planning commission approval of such master plan. That's all that you would need to say. So I guess with that, unless Darla has any comments or additional edits, I would turn it over to the commission for any final suggestions. There were, I think, a couple of things that we received within like the past month or so. Most of them were things that Darla and I were able to work through. There were a couple of items on there that I think that we wouldn't be comfortable changing ourselves. It's not just, add a picture. It's a more substantive conversation. So those items, I think we would refer to the planning commission for your further discussion. But we have nothing else at this point. So I guess, Darla, do we want to go through the comments that we received from the public?
To let them at least know
Yep.
what we included in the master plan and
If there's any changes that we suggest to make and we counter or we hold this off to the next meeting, does a public hearing have to be made for the edited? So if there's any changes that are made, we don't have to have another public hearing.
It'd have to be very substantive, major changes then maybe, but I guess I don't anticipate those.
Okay.
So, no, we would not need to do another public hearing unless the city council.
Yeah, because there were some suggestions made by the public that were good points, and yeah, maybe you can comment on those. So,
So I guess,
it's in the packet.
so the first one, so these are comments from, Ms. Sue Wolf, a letter from her in August. We'll just kind of go through, she had a number of comments. We'll just address some of them briefly. So the first comment was about the planning process. The comment here was that, I think the concern was that there wasn't adequate public input was received as part of the process. We did do a community survey that received 183 responses, and that was the only engagement other than the expo that we did in support of the plan. So, again, it's a valid comment, but also there are budgetary limitations that affect kind of the scope for a project like this. So, we did what we could do with the budget that was provided and what the city could afford. And frankly, You know, I mean, if we had a public meeting or a town hall that had 183 people showed up, we'd be filled with that level of participation. So 183 survey responses, I think, are pretty good. We did send the survey out to registered voters, I believe. So we got both owners and renters. We wanted to make sure that because Cedar Springs has a pretty decent rental population within the city, we didn't want just to get the property owners, a bunch of which probably don't live here. We wanted to get renters too, which we did through that survey process, and that was important for us. I guess the other thing I would point out here is that while I can appreciate the need to agree with some degree, the need to sort of maximize the amount of public engagement that you get for a master plan, we decided to go out at this point and secure more public input. We're looking at, 6 month delay in this entire process. And Ellie is the person who wants to kind of keep this moving along. I would be a little bit hesitant to do something like that. Respect to population, so her second comment is about population. She asked about using more current data than 2020. So we kind of benchmarked this with the census information. There is more current information available that we use from time to time through the American Community Survey. However, that data also has limitations because it's a survey, it's a sample. And so when you have a smaller jurisdiction like the city, your margin of error can balloon up to a uncomfortably large number at times. And so we felt like it's good to use what's probably more accurate, which is the actual census. And then beyond that, I agree that a lot has changed in the last 5 years, but more change is coming as well, right? The city has approved a lot of additional housing and some additional development over the last couple of years. But numbers are going to kind of continue to change as we move through this process. B, the comment about Nelson Township, we fixed that. On item 3, she asks about the age brackets. Some of these I think are good observations, but I'm not sure that they warrant an adjustment in the plan. So she knows that the largest age bracket of city residents are between the ages of 60 and 60. And then there's comment about what are we doing to attract other ages. I think that is addressed in some of the goals and objectives talk specifically about economic development, attracting job producing companies to the city, where we're looking to a working age, sort of middle age residents and families to the city. Additional comments here. So additional photos about the high school, we did that. Definition of income, we addressed that. We have information in here already that addresses the Creative Technology Academy. It's just in a different section. We added the language that she suggested about the heart of Cedar Springs Park. Else?
Skinner Field information.
Yep, we added Skinner Field information. We added we double checked the enrollment numbers for Cedar Springs Public Schools. We'd added something about the public alarm system, I believe. We'd added references to the Cedar Springs area parks and recreation throughout the document, so that was made. Comment on community night. I don't have a number of participants there because it was just sort of an open house casual thing where people would walk by, we'd talk for a few minutes and they'd kind of wander off, and got some feedback there, but I guess wouldn't be comfortable saying that we got 20 or 30 or 50 participants. I have no idea what that actual number was. So that's why we didn't put an actual number in there. Let's see what else. Did not make any changes to the goals and objectives. So one of the things that we could do here, so she suggests she likes the goals and objectives, but states that it's also important to establish some action plans with a timeline on how to achieve them. There are some communities that have done that, where they'll have a list of the goals, or a list of the implementation strategies, and then a timeline for when that needs to be done. We opted to not include that here, primarily because, we're looking to kind of maximize flexibility for the city to kind of accomplish what it can, given its resources available to it. Some of these, so what we find sometimes is that when there is something that is a long-term goal, sometimes an opportunity comes up in year 2, don't know is coming up, and then you can jump on it right away. And I don't want the master plan to serve as a sort of obstacle. Say, well, this isn't something that we really wanted to do for 10 more years. So we did not prioritize those in that way for that reason. If you wish to add a little more direction and guidance in terms of timeline in here, we're happy to do it. And a bunch of communities have done that, so it's not like it's a problem to do it. We just decided to not do it here. A couple of comments in here about housing. Not had anything regarding consideration of a zoning district that would accommodate right size or tiny housing.
But you and I talked about maybe looking at our ordinance to see if we could change something in our ordinance. Yeah,
That, because it's a good idea.
Yeah, so
reducing that minimum square footage size. Yeah.
well, one of the first things that a lot of communities do when they're looking at housing costs is especially if you're talking just construction costs, you're talking $200 a square foot or more. So even a modest house that's 1,000, 1,500 square feet, you're at a minimum $200,000 to $300,000 if it's a new construction, which is not including utility project. You're not including streets and water and sewer and all this stuff in there. So the costs are very, very high. So one of the things that some communities do is look to reduce the minimum floor area for houses within various some districts. It'll say a house has to be at least 1,200 square feet or 1,000 square feet or something like that. So looking for an opportunity to maybe drop that down to 500 or 600 square feet instead of making 1,000 is an opportunity to allow for smaller dwelling units. And that is something that we could look at here. So right now in the city, your minimum for a single family dwelling is 1,000 square feet. And if it's a 2-story house, then you have to have 650 square feet on the ground floor. You would have to have at least 350 on an upper floor. For a 2-family or townhouse, you got to have 900 square feet. So those are our numbers that we could look to bring down. We would do that through zoning, not through the master plan, but that is something that we could certainly. Are there any other comments or questions about that?
I think it's a good idea.
So she has a comment in here about rental residence, which I agree with, but I don't know that warrants a change in the plan itself. Has to consider adding pickleball courts, a boardwalk, creative rustic overnight stay facility. Great suggestions. I think those are better placed in the city's 5-year Parks and Recreation Master Plan. They're talking about specific recreation projects, which I think are better put in the master plan and kind of left there. Certainly the master plan would support that type of development, and if the city were to project like that. That was kind of the end of the suggestions. So if there's anything in here, and so I think again overall, I think these were all very worthwhile comments, and I'm glad that she made them. We probably made 2/3 of what she put in there. The couple I think that I would ask for the planning commission's input on would be, should we add something specific about reducing the minimum size of houses? Should we add some kind of a implementation table or matrix that has specific priorities and timelines. I think those could be helpful if that's something that you want to add in here. Not strictly necessary, but again, could be helpful. And that's something that we'd be happy to do. That's felt that was appropriate.
Is there any restriction? I know what these tiny houses are kind of a trend that's starting, but another trend that's starting is barn dominium housing. Is there anything in the zoning prohibiting that? Or are we strictly under stick built only housing with
Um,
barn dominiums? They seem to be a little bit cheaper, you know.
it kind of depends on how you define them. So some places will consider a barn dominium as a dwelling unit. What we've seen in a lot of other communities is that basically they will build a large pole barn and then reserve a very small portion of that for dwelling unit space, and then the other 75% of it is storage or barn type of area. There are, and I don't know off the top of my head what your zoning ordinance does, but a lot of communities have language in there that says that you're have an attached accessory building or an attached garage, that the area of that can't exceed the area of the dwelling unit itself. So a restriction like that basically limits or prevents barn dominium. It's up to you in terms of whether or not you actually want to permit them or not, or if you want to adopt further restrictions on them. I don't have a strong opinion on them either way.
Classify them as barn dominiums in the paperwork. I would probably classify them as post and beam construction housing, you know, because then it takes the barn part out of it.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
We don't really look at the construction methods too much. We're mostly looking at
The aesthetics.
the aesthetic, well, not just the aesthetics, but the size of the unit and how it fits on the lot and what tall it is, and
Backs.
setbacks and bulk and things like that. I don't really know how it's built, whether it's a pole barn style construction or a typical frame construction. From a zoning perspective or a land use perspective, it doesn't really matter. It's still a single family dwelling that's accommodating one family, a couple of parking spots, a certain size yard, and all that kind of stuff. And so from a planning perspective, I don't really care, frankly, how the construction.
Here, when young couples want to build a barn dominium in the city limits, I just don't want them to have to face any kind of zoning or obstructions with that,
Minimum floor square feet of R1 zoning. Put a draft together that would accomplish allowing something like that and see.
Yeah. I mean, it could, and I just don't recall off the top of my head. It could be that a barn dominium could be constructed right now. I honestly just don't know. So that's something that we'd have to, if that's something that you wanted to pursue, that's something that we'd have to look at through a zoning amendment after the plan's done.
All right, thank you. Is anybody else?
I don't know if this is exactly a master plan subject, but I thought possibly painting the ridges of the bump outs on Main Street would help slow traffic, and many people don't see that portion of the bump outs that are in the road until they are over them. And our objective was to slow down the traffic and make drivers more careful. If the thought concept was that they'd slow traffic down, they need to be seen. I have to totally agree with that.
We do have, great comment. It's not, so it is, it is and it isn't a master plan thing. So it is in the sense that the master plan is interested in pulling down traffic speeds, making it safer for pedestrians crossing the street. That is in here already as a goal or an objective. One of the ways that you would accomplish that could be through painting bump outs or just building more of them, having additional streetscaping, additional on-street parking, things that you can do to kind of increase that edge friction that tends to slow people down. So I think the overall purpose or the overall thought of we need to slow down traffic to accommodate pedestrians and bicyclists is a great observation, and that is addressed in here. I don't know, and again, we can certainly add that specifically, but I don't think the fact that it isn't in here does not preclude you from doing that.
Correct.
I made that comment too. I think that's a great idea. Another concern that person had too was when you're pulling out off of off of Ash into Main Street, take it, there's cars parked on both sides. You just cannot see. So I don't know if we can lower the speed limit. I don't know if we have to address that in here specifically.
I don't think you do. So again, the plan has an overarching goal of, improving transportation options and improving pedestrian connections, pedestrian connectivity through sidewalks, crosswalks, trails, etc. is different places. So I don't know that we need to do that. We can. That's something that want to get into some of those specifics. I'm 100% fine with that. Kind of up to you. It's not going to make it impossible if you don't, but
Maybe I think we should put a line in there at least to say like, adjusting speed limits on city roads, given circumstances or whatever,
I think we've addressed safety in here. That leaves us a pretty broad ability to interpret what needs the community is going to have in the future, right? I think the less specific we are in here, the more that this is going to be adaptable as the city expands and grows. And that's kind of the point of this in my mind. The more specific we get on this, the more we have, the more you're committed to it. Like I get having objectives and timelines. I'm a firm believer in having a goal with a date, but if it's not needed and then we're committed to this, I mean, that's the thing I would say, all right, let's not put a date in here if we don't have to commit to this goal, because otherwise we're just doing busy work and then wasting taxpayer dollars in my mind that are unneeded. So I'd rather leave it a little bit more broad so that we can adjust this as needed and address it as the city grows.
As a planning commission, maybe we should address that pretty soon.
Well, if there's concerns, I think with like the bump outs being painted, that's probably something the city can be aware of, and it doesn't need to be in here, right?
Think it was, but it's long.
Or whatever that lights up, those are downtown GR has a bunch of those now with crossing sections that if you get there, you hit the button, it lights up and everybody knows you got to slow down because somebody's going to cross there, right? If we need something like that, I mean, it's something that the safety part of this would address in my mind.
Yes, we could do it in the future.
Is that something that needs council approval or is that planning commission approval? Bump outs. That specific thing.
Direction from city council when it comes to the budget. If that's a council priority for next fiscal year, then I work with my staff to implement that and get the budget to do that.
Added as a discussion item at the next meeting, not this Thursday, but maybe the following. Yeah, just making sure to add that to. So, cool.
I think we have to be careful on like Main Street stuff, right? Because my understanding that's a highway, so it's more MDOT. Like when it comes to stop signs and speed limits, we don't really have any control of that, is my understanding. We've had this conversation in the past. There's not a whole lot we can do because it's a state road.
So how many months have we been working on the master plan now? 6?
Oh, it's been a while.
I feel like a year. Yeah, well over a year. Yeah.
So
And I feel like we've done our due diligence. We did send stuff out and those that decided to responded. And that's the hard part is, I won't say there's a priority. We did ask for their input and it's hard if they're not going to respond, right? We can't force people to do that. We can take the information that we have and do our best to offer that information that's given back from the community.
and we do have to do this again? Right. So we have to do this again in 5 years?
review the plan every 5 years. You don't have to do anything. So in 5 years, we will need to review the plan, and then you as a planning commission will need to determine if an update is warranted. If it is, then you would go through the same process as you went through this time, although it might not be as long. Or you can look at it in 5 years and say, nope, everything looks fine, we're not gonna change anything, then you're done for another 5 years. All you have to do is review it, you don't have to actually change it. The consensus of the commission, are we gonna add anything as far as traffic calming? It sounds like there was a couple of you were supportive of that and a couple others maybe not so much, so I guess I would appreciate some direction so I know what to put in here or not. So if you can make a decision on that, it'd be helpful.
I do agree with Mr. Hogg. I mean, the more specific we get, the more we tie our hands up in the future. You're absolutely right. You know, and these are things we can address, you know, without putting it in there. So I do appreciate that.
I know there was a resolution on this, but I completely lost my agenda packet for some reason. So maybe somebody else has access to it. April's gonna fix it for me.
We've had a couple of other public comments too. One from Arthur and Lori Visser, who live on 16 Mile Road. So they had a concern about the proposed. Yes, we had I'm trying to find the map number. So we had a proposed extension of West Street shown on the future map. All the way down to 80 Mile.
Yeah, I saw it once.
Opposed to that extension. Comments and concerns with respect to that potentiality. Again, so that is shown on the future land use map, which is on page 62 of the plan. So you'll see, and there we have these blue kind of dashed lines drawn all over the place. So the extension of West Street, as you know, runs north and south. So it's just through that industrial park. It just continues it south down and then intersects with 16 miles. Right now it's a cul-de-sac. I believe there is right of way there presently. But the city has not actually in the construction of that yet. So
A lot of our concern was like, once the traffic gets to 16 Mile is not designed. Well, I mean, that's all part of the process. If we say, okay, we're putting West Street down 16 Mile, all of this needs to be added to the list to accomplish that.
down there, so 16 Mile down there would be jurisdiction of the County Road Commission. So we need to coordinate with them on what improvements, if any, would be necessary on anticipated traffic patterns. That part of town is mostly industrial in the city. It's all zoned in industrial, and that's where we are inviting to occur. So that was one comment, and the other comment was, I don't remember this one. We had one note here to just add more events to the cultural amenities section. So this is up on page 39 or so plan. So they just wanted a reference to the New Year's Eve ball drop, the Renaissance Fair, Halloween, Spooktacular, Christmas events, things like that. So we added added those to the list of other community events and added a bunch of pictures to that effect. There was also a comment about researching and implementing renewable resources like solar energy in the master plan. I think, so there's a couple of things there. One, from a planning and zoning perspective, the city doesn't really have the acreage for utility scale solar or wind or even energy storage facilities here within the city. To the extent the city can accommodate those things, I think it already has. About a year ago, we adopted that you adopted the solar ordinance into the plan, which permits most properties in the city to have either roof or ground mounted solar panels on their properties. And there's also a comment here, same thing about slowing traffic on Main Street. So again, great comments there. I think that is addressed and to left somewhat general, so the city has the flexibility to address that in whatever way makes sense, whether it's with signaling, stop signs, speed reduction. That was it as far as the comments are concerned. Are there any other questions or comments from the planning commission?
Braden? No. Okay.
Anybody have any comments? That was everything.
As an outsider who's just coming in with some level of expectation, I thought it was a pretty impressive plan for what my expectation was and what I read through. I was impressed. So good job.
Awesome. All right. So we are gonna vote for the public hearing then? The
2025-01.
All right. Does anybody want to take a motion to accept the resolution?
I'll make a motion to accept the resolution. You need me to read the whole thing, or can we just say? All right. That's because we don't have a number on this one, on the one I'm looking at. Resolution number, what is it?
5-01.
-01, resolution recommending adoption of the proposed Cedar Springs master plan to the city council and constituting planning commission approval of such master plan.
I'll support that. Okay. Any discussion? All right, I'll take a roll call vote on this one. Mrs. Powell? Ms. Neparowski? Mr. Rosinski? Mr. Hogg?
Yep.
Mr. Shargat?
Yes.
And Mr. Marvel votes yes. Passes 6-0. We do not have any site plan reviews. Other business, 10A, motion to approve resolution 2025-2. Mrs. Falcon, you have anything on that?
So we have to set the dates for the 2026 calendar for the planning commission meeting dates. This is what we're proposing. Please note, some of them are not the first Tuesday of the month due to elections or other meetings. We move those to the second Tuesday of the month.
Okay, so we can approve that tonight, right? Did everybody look through those and? All right, I will accept motions to approve resolution 2025-02.
I'll make a motion to accept resolution number 2025-202. You want me to read it? I'd be glad to. A resolution to establish the regular meeting dates of the Planning Commission from January 2026 through December 2026.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, we'll do a roll call vote on this one too, just cause. Mrs. Powell? Ms. Naparowski? Mr. Rosinski?
Yeah.
Mr. Hogg?
Yep.
Mr. Shargat?
Yes.
Mr. Marvel votes yes. 6-0. 10B, North Main Street sign permit, denied discussion. Mrs. Falcon.
I wanted to bring this to your attention tonight. I've talked with Mr. Moore about this a little bit. I'm hoping maybe it was just something we didn't intend to put in our sign ordinance, but here it is. Mr. business on 90 North Main 3 days ago had one sign above the business, Perry's Place. That sign got taken down. The building owner painted the storefront, did some other things out there. So Perry applies for a new sign ordinance, putting 2 signs above each set of windows. Our current ordinance does not allow this, basically because he has one entrance for all the businesses that happen in this building. If you look at the Subway strip mall, every business in there has their sign above their storefront. The storefronts on the corner of Main and Muskegon, each business has their sign above their door. Is there 2 businesses here? There's probably 3 or 4 businesses here, honestly, inside. You know, there's massaging and dance and whatever, you know, dance and fitness classes. When we change the sign ordinance, do you feel that we want to reduce the amount of signs on Main Street, therefore only one should be allowed? Or was this kind of, oops, we didn't think of this scenario, 2 signs like proposed would be acceptable? Does that make sense?
I think it looks way better with 2 signs, and it makes more sense to have 2 signs.
I wouldn't rent a space if I couldn't put a sign out front and let people know that I'm there. It's only logical.
So in our ordinance, when we said 1 sign per entrance, that's where we're saying 2 signs are not allowed. But I mean, was that unintended consequences when we changed the sign ordinance? I think yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If there's 3 or 4 businesses, so should there be 3 or 4 signs? Is that how that goes?
I mean, maybe, not necessarily. He does have other options. There's A-frame signs on the sidewalk. There are this sign that comes away from the building, advertises the dance and fitness studio. There are other ways of getting more signage. Signage in the windows is allowable.
Fitness is upstairs though, correct? That's a different entrance.
We done 1 sign over each business suite,
Uh-huh.
and then the 1 protruding for the upstairs dance.
Oh.
Not asking for anything new,
Mm-hmm.
just what's been historically done.
Mm-hmm.
Authority to.
So the way the ordinance reads now, so in the B2 district, it a wall sign or an awning / canopy / marquee sign, so one or the other. And it permits a projecting sign, which is the other one that he's got that protrudes out this way. And it permits a window sign and a temporary sign, a sandwich board. So like the intent when this was put together was because we're more restrictive in terms of so it's only 50 square feet is the maximum sign area, so that part is more restrictive, so we kind of compensate for that by allowing different types. You can do wall and projecting and sandwich boards and window and other stuff. So one thing so for me, the more important thing is to focus on the size and not necessarily how many there are. Like if we're going to allow multiple signs, I wouldn't want to have each sign be 50 square feet. Someone has 3 or 4 establishments within one building, all of a sudden we're going to have 200 feet of wall signage on Main Street, and I don't think that's what you're after. So one thing that we could look at doing would be to say, basically limit the cumulative area of all signage to 50 square feet. So if you had one sign or two sign or three signs, as long as the total area of all of them did not exceed a certain, that would be fine. We also have a provision that talks about multi-tenant establishments that permits one wall sign per establishment. So that's what we talk about for strip mall that you have down at the corner where the Thai restaurant, some other stuff is that each suite that has its own separate entrance, that's its own separate business, each get their own kind of sign. So what Darla and I had talked about with this establishment is that if there were separate entrances, sort of clearly separate suites for each business, then we would be looking at two signs, but it's all sort of like seems to be integrated into kind of there's one main entrance and one front door, and you could really have an infinite number of businesses in there depending on how the business model worked. So we're trying to, I guess, strike a balance between accommodating the needs of property owner and certainly allowing them to advertise their business, but not open this, you know, kind of Pandora's box that we might be looking at where we have this potential for overwhelming signage, not necessarily for this person, but for somebody that's looking to exploit some loopholes in 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 years down the line. I don't want to get ourselves into a position where we have to. It's going to be really hard to sort of undo those kinds of things as opposed to kind of starting with a more restrictive set of standards like we have now and then figuring out a way to get to a place that works for everybody.
So you were kind of proposing, not proposing, but a sign cannot be more than 50 square feet or multiple signs not taking up more than 120 square feet or something like that.
Yeah, so I mean, we could look at. So I guess I'm less, like I said, my thought is I'm less concerned about the number of signs than about the total area of all of the signs. So if he has 3 signs that are each 15 square feet, I don't really, that's fine. It doesn't really bother me. But if he has, yeah, just because in total, those don't afford him any more signage than the person next door that only has one establishment in their building, right? So that's, to me, that's more like a fair way to do it. What I wouldn't want to see is a person with 4 establishments in their building, each of those then entitled to 50 square feet. And, you know, he would be entitled to a practical billboard on the side of his building. And that's not kind of what, that doesn't fit with Main Street and also wouldn't be an equitable way to do it with the other. So
Square footage that's proposed at this time.
They're 10 by 2, because that's what they want. Each sign's 10 foot by 2. I've got the boards that have been from previous instances.
What's the square footage?
40 square feet times 2, so a total of 40 square feet in signing. That would fit. I mean, that's less than 50. Kind of the way that, and so one thing that was interesting about this is it's kind of due to the design of the building is that like if you had both of these, this had them basically like connected, so it was one sign. This would be signed and done.
I got a picture of that. Yeah, they're connected by a half-inch candy cane going across.
Well, I mean, so yeah. I appreciate the creativity, but it had to be like one actual, you know, complete. I know. So well, exactly right. So the unique thing about this is that the actual building itself does not lend itself to one sign that would be 20 feet by 2 different storefront here,
Yeah.
but it doesn't work for him. So that's why you would all for multiple signs, as long as the cumulative total area of all signs doesn't exceed 50. That's a reasonable kind of compromise where he can have 2 signs, but he's still not afforded any additional area that other people would not be entitled to, and it would still maintain the city's overall objective of not.
Ordinance change.
Yeah, I think so. So I mean, we could I mean, you could, not really your job, so I mean, you could interpret this. I guess this is really the job of the zoning board of it. Best way moving forward to keep track of it would be to amend the zoning ordinance to say, add a footnote or something that says, you know, multiple signs may be permitted as long as a cumulative area.
That could get a little tricky.
We'd have to draft a zoning amendment, probably would be the cleanest way to.
Hmm.
Still scheduled for a public hearing next month. Time.
But, let me make sure I'm understanding this right. I mean, technically somebody could have 51 square foot signs in front of their building.
Under that suggestion, yes.
Confused, because to me, look at this front of this storefront looks very confusing. I don't know what they sell. I mean, not that we're here to decide on how somebody promotes their store. I'm just thinking if we did that with 51-foot signs, that would just make our downtown look confusing to me. And I'm like, what's the point of our ordinance? Is it to make the downtown look uniform, inform consumers as they come downtown? I guess that's the question I'm asking myself, and I don't know if I know the answer right now.
Can we put something in there about you cannot have more than one sign per business in the building, per registered business in the building?
Sure. So you can do that. What comes to mind? So what I'm also trying to avoid, the signs are like the most difficult thing in zoning to deal with.
Yeah.
Because
So
months
if people
who
are super
can
creative,
change the sign ordinance.
So like if you think about, for example, I said antique shop are little booths that they, or spaces that they rent out to antique dealers from all over the place. I don't want to even try to figure out if each one of those would then be entitled to a sign outside and that is so. That's kind of what I'm worried about with stuff like this, is I'd like to keep it as simple as we can. But still have it be flexible enough to allow, I mean, one of those things where like common sense, we would look at this and say, yeah, it looks fine. And,
Yeah. Could you say like one sign per business suite, which I think you mentioned? That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, if we have like clearly delineated, that would work. I mean, typically, and that's kind of what we do for the multi-tenant establishments, like the strip malls, right? They each have separate tenants, separate people can rent, so those are separate suites. A little bit harder when there's kind of one owner and it's, that delineation isn't as
One owner.
clean.
Are technically suite A's. It's just, I first moved in, I rented a small room in suite B.
Why don't you come up here and talk to us?
Okay, so the lowdown, back in 2008, when I moved in, I just rented a small massage room in the back of Suite B. There was a different tenant upstairs in Suite D. Suite C has been vacant for almost 40 years. Suite A has had multiple business owners since I've lived there. In 2010, the previous owner of the tea shop couldn't make it go over and was moving out. Instead of relocating, I took over the tea shop, thus becoming Perry's Place LLC for herbs, teas, and more. I've slowly taken over renting more space in the building. 2012, Sleeping Dog Yoga moved out of the dance studio, and I took that over as an extension of Kennel Hope Natural Health and expanded that into a dance and fitness studio as well. 2016, I was needing more retail space. Well, really in 2015 I wanted, but landlord was reluctant to cut a hole in the wall for my traffic to go in and kept trying to re-rent the other side, the businesses that only stayed there a year at a time. So in 2016, I was able to convince him to let me use it, but instead of spending an extra $1,000 a month in labor and a second cash register system, cut a hole in the wall like it used to be years ago. And now my foot traffic can go inside, and the other door is more of an emergency exit or moving things in and out for displays. But previous tenants was able, because if you walk in front of my building, even with the paint job, you can see the holes on the building where the previous signs were. And so basically that's what I'm asking to be able to do. Because when you look at the building driving down the road, see, the eye care's got a sign. And if this side has a sign, but this one over here doesn't have a sign on top, even though I got stuff in the window, it looks like that's a vacant door. That's a vacant suite. And when you go to drive by the front, you can clearly tell they're not all the same business suite. They're not all the same address. When Morley built that building, it was first started with 92, 90 North Main, eventually went to 86, which is now 86 and 88. But over time, they've been switched around. 86 and 88 was originally an aftermath to my building. But when Morley, that built the building, was no longer around, the people that had it after him sold it off to different people. But then 92 and 90 North became all 90 North Main Street, just different suites. And so, yes, it's technically all one business owner, but when you're driving down by the road, do you know that? When you say, oh, well, that's all one business owner, I've never been in there, but they only should have one side. Otherwise, it looks ugly to have more than one sign for one business owner. That's not the case.
I think we're all in agreement with you for sure, and we're gonna,
Holiday stuff, one side is all health and fitness stuff. I mean, like, is it really easier to sell cannabis in this town than it is Christmas?
just capped it at 4. I mean, what business in town is gonna put more than 4 signs up?
The 50 square foot is where we should stick. Because that way you can still get your 2 signs on your downstairs business and one small one or smaller.
Or business suite?
It's not technically a suite though.
Instead of parcels.
Number of doors facing Main Street. I'm looking at this, there's 2 doors facing Main Street. I don't know what the rest of the businesses are. I think the Redbirds probably got 2 doors if I remember. I think they have emergency exit and a main exit. If we limit it to something like that where it's the number of doors facing Main Street, that might be an easier answer to this. Because that would solve this problem that we're trying to address while making sure that we keep the sign ordinance and downtown looking uncluttered. Even if one is not the main entrance, it would still kind of maybe help that out. So maybe that's something to look at, is the number of those doors that are facing Main Street, and saying you get 1 sign per number of doors, used or not. And then maybe with that, with the maximum number of square feet, if we didn't address that in the ordinance and just, because we don't want giant signs.
The only business I can think of that might be a problem for is like the dental place. They don't have a door facing Main Street, but they should still be able to put a sign up on front of their building there.
Yeah, I guess. I'm just thinking of a solution to this that's easy.
Simpler things we could look at. So the portion where we talk about multi-tenant establishments, so the part that we get in just reading the plain language of the ordinance is this is multi-tenant establishments. So like this one, there is 1 tenant, but there's 2 suites or 4 suites or whatever here. So it could be something as simple as just saying like for, multi-tenant establishments or establishments with multiple spaces in them that are used for different purposes.
With a maximum square footage per address, right? Yeah.
Then you would allow one per suite or establishment or.
Because I do like the idea of the maximum square footage, so it doesn't look ridiculous.
Yeah, are we all in agreement with 50 on that? I mean, that's what it's at now, so.
I'd have to defer, I think, to Mr. Moore. He probably knows what more cities are doing, what's a reasonable size. I have no clue. It's not.
50 is for a downtown, yes. If we're on Mesquite, we're by the highway. This is crazy if you told me it had to be 50 square feet. And we've done that in some other communities, and we've gotten a lot of complaints about it. Eventually, it adapted over time, but so I think 50 is fine for downtown. And even here, I think what's proposed, those 2 signs that are each 20. I mean, that's a that's a good scale, and I mean, it looks fine, right? It looks great. And that's exactly the kind of thing that we want to encourage downtown, is something that
Yeah.
aesthetic, it's not overly distracting for drivers, it lets them advertise the business, or they can really try to figure out the best way to codify all of this into really got into a couple of sentences that we can write in.
All right, so one more question on that. Do we have a minimum size for suites in the zoning? Okay. I'm just thinking there's somebody might find a loophole there where they're like, I got 50 suites in there. Right? And I'm just trying to think of how do we make sure that this looks good and somebody's not trying to game us a little bit, you know?
We could say, I mean, so all of this is going to be subject to zoning administrator interpretation, right? So when anybody comes in to do anything, you know, it's my job to sort of interpret, you know, take a look at the application and interpret the ordinance and apply it in a way that makes the most sense. Usually that's pretty easy. Sometimes we get kind of a weird case like this where it's like, well, is this a multi-tenant establishment? And I mean, we spent an hour on the phone going back and forth about this a few times because it's just isn't clear. And these are the cases where we're just sort of applying the plain language as best we can to the situation. And that's kind of how we ended up getting stuck. So I think that we can clarify this without too much fuss to address the situation. And you know, one thing that we can potentially, and what I guess would advocate to rely on, we do just the application of the standards from the zoning administrator should, to me, kind of a baseline level of interpreting and applying something using common sense and in good faith to uphold the ordinance and yet work with the property owner or the business owner to help them.
I guess I like the idea of, you know, number of suites if we need you know, one sign per suite with the maximum square footage. And so if you have to amend our sign ordinance again. Yeah.
So are you saying that each suite should be able to have a 50-foot sign or?
Total for that address, right? So each address could have a total of 50 square feet, but the number of suites inside each suite, because potentially each suite could be its own individual business. And then it would be up to those business owners to decide, you know, does everybody get X amount of square feet? We just divide it by the number of suites that are in there. I think that'd be the business owner's decision, not ours, right? Yeah.
Windows do say a lot too, the window signs and the sandwich board, so.
Most people driving by in the car, that's what they look at, is the signs up top. The window are more for walkers, because that size print you can't really see when you're in car unless you're gonna hit somebody's back of their car.
We could say something like, so when we talk about suites versus, you know, establishments or whatever, we have to be careful that if we say not more than a cumulative total of 50, I don't want to restrict everybody in the strip mall, that each one of those can now only have like 8 square feet of signage because there's like 6 or 7 businesses in those suites, right? So I think we could say something like, you know, for establishments that are under one ownership but contain multiple suites, you can have multiple wall signs as long as you're staying under the total cumulative area of 50 square feet. Something like that.
Just feel like you got enough from us.
Yes. So what we will need to do is draft a zoning amendment. That'll have to come back here for a public hearing, which might be able to do for November. If not November, then December. Get it adopted. That's squared away.
My mind, these aren't 2 separate suites. They're one business, they're your business, correct?
At least as if it's for 3 different suites.
One upstairs. I'm just thinking about the 2 downstairs. It's really one business, but you've got a different part of that building. So it's a separate suite, but accessible from the inside, not like the mall or something where you go in one door and that's it. So, you know, I I understand where you're coming from on this. And I think we should stick to the 50-foot. And you will still have room for your other business in a totally separate. The dance suite upstairs.
Where would you like me to put that 50-foot sign?
Not talking that way about that. If you put up two 20-square-foot signs, you will then have an extra 10-foot.
I thought you meant one 50-foot sign.
But Perry,
It proposes me to put an 8x8 sign. I'm like, where? She can't tell me that, but that's what her proposal was. Where does an 8-foot by 8-foot sign fit on the front of my building without blocking the window door and still look aesthetic?
The one, so it's a dance studio upstairs. And that one is advertised on the projecting sign. So the projecting sign is fine as it is. That can just stay there or be replaced or whatever. So what we're talking about here is only really has to do with the number of wall signs. And so if we said you can have one wall sign per establishment, as long as you're not exceeding the 50 square feet in total, then you could have two each, as long as the total of both of those doesn't exceed 50, that's something that would be permitted if we were to draft this ordinance the way that we're talking about.
Right.
So I think we can accomplish that.
I think that's fair.
For the discussion, appreciate it.
Move on. Number 11, open discussion for issues not on the agenda. Mrs. Falcon, is there anything on there that we need to talk about? Correspondence?
They're here or under city manager comments. Give me the history of allowing golf carts in the city, please, if there is any.
Strict.
Loud. Wow.
Because I know on Red Flannel Day, it's dangerous. There's too many people. The only way we had golf carts was to have a permit issued from the city, specifically for red flannel only. Now, I know they're getting popular and they're running all over the place, so I don't know what to say, how to enforce that sort of thing.
What's the state law on these, on public roads? I mean, that would, whatever the state law is, that should be followed, right?
That local units can opt to permit them and regulate them if they want to. We actually just had this conversation a few months ago in Belding. They were with me this. They ultimately voted to not allow them because, you got to light them, you got to put, brakes on them, and the uniform traffic code or whatever stuff comes into play in those regulations. They were talking about having a permit process, and they drafted a bunch of regulations for them. There were a bunch of concerns. Some of them, are about how people are going to customize them and who's going to inspect them, and who, if they're doing something, then we're going to be taking police resources to pull them over and give them, all this other stuff. And so for them, part of the issue was just the administrative kind of overhead that it takes up to do something like that was part of it. And there were also, I think, just some general public health and safety concerns that they had there. And I don't remember the details of the ordinance, but it's come up in a bunch of places. A lot of communities do allow them, but I think cities, my experience, cities seem to be more hesitant to do it than some fairly rural township where there's not as much traffic, not as many people around. It's more spread out. That doesn't seem to be as big of a deal, especially in some of those kind of tight-knit lakefront communities, and people are just kind of zipping around in the summer. Yeah, I mean, it's something that wouldn't be a planning commission issue, but I think you would have to draft an ordinance to specifically permit and regulate them.
What about Sheriff's Department? What do they say?
So they're one of the ones that we would need to, I don't know.
I was told by a guy who wanted to drive it on the road that it has to have a license plate. It has to be roadworthy, and his kid said, don't do it. I can't afford it.
be like anything else. So if you have a dirt bike, right, you can't just go riding it down the street. Like you got to have lights on it and plates and everything. I don't know about how you go about licensing them, but I think you would have to kind of have some of those basic.
You do, you do.
Because, you know, half the year it's dark from like, you know, 9 a.m. till, or 9 p. 7, 6, 5 p.m. till you know,
Mhm.
7 a.m. So it's
You're on the road. You've got to have a license and you got to be roadworthy.
Is this an issue? Like,
I've had citizens request, do we allow golf carts? And I said, no, only like on festivals, you know, Red Flannel and the festival allows whatever. One lady wants, she has mobility issues and she said I would come downtown more if I could just drive my golf cart and have shorter distances to walk from business to business.
More golf carts driving downtown if we're already concerned about speed issues and down there, right? Seems like a Pandora's box to me, and we don't need to open.
Across the street and one of them is a quite a
council decision, right?
so you'd have to adopt it, be like a police power ordinance that would permit and regulate them. And honestly, I mean, you'd want to rely mostly on input of law enforcement. And
So maybe next meeting, I'll just put it as a discussion item. All right. Anything else?
That's it under open discussion items.
All right. And then staff comments. You have any more comments?
I do. So I've had a lot of zoning questions lately, just questions in general, nothing specifically, but that's time consuming. Some I bounce off Andy and some I kind of handle on my own. Well, the ordinance says this, you know, so a lot of it's just information gathering, so. Heart of Cedar Springs project, they started yesterday on the playground. The building is looking really good, not quite finished yet, but they are on track to be completed by October 23rd. So that'll be a nice addition down there. And Rebecca and I had a tour of the new city hall today, the inside of the building. That is looking really sharp inside. They really got that, the bricks down to almost a white color on the inside, so we want to have it that natural brick color. So, and the wood beam out front that got sandblasted, that's going to remain out, looks really nice too. So really excited to see that project as it moves forward and takes shape. So that's all I had.
Hey, city clerk. Miss April, you have anything? All right. Planning commission members. Just comments. Mrs. Powell?
about the rest of you, but I had a wonderful Red Flannel day. I'd like to thank the sheriff department for keeping things under control and our citizens and our city hosting this wonderful festival. And that's what it all boils down to. This is Cedar Springs' favorite, oldest festival, most historical festival. And we're very fortunate to have such a great board that just works their guts out all year long, and especially Red Flannel Day. They're a fabulous bunch of people, and I love working with them. So thank you, everybody who did anything and everything to help with that festival.
All right, you're gonna have to help me with your last, Miss Naparolas.
And I have no comments. I've got a cold. Thank you.
Mr. Mrozinski.
No comment.
Mr. Hogg.
Good too.
Mr.
No
Park-
comment from me as well. So
All right.
we're good.
Sounds good. And then I'll just do the city council representative report as well. I think it was a good meeting tonight, and I think we had a good discussion, and I think the sign ordinance sucks. And you're doing a great job with trying to, you know, get all that together. So no, it doesn't actually, it's just, yeah, you know what I mean. It's a headache. Yeah.
Has been.
Well, yeah, we'll get that ironed out. And I just thank you to the public for your comments on the master plan. I mean, there's a lot of attention to detail in that from some of you, so we really appreciate that feedback. And as far as the city council goes, pretty much new city hall going in. There's no really new breaking developments. So we'll be in contact with stuff and yeah, report of the planning consultant. Who is that? That's you.
Say thank you for all of your work on the master plan. It's been a very long process and spent a lot of hours reading it and reviewing it and editing, studying, suggesting. So thank you and I appreciate it. And I'm excited to have that off your plate and onto city council's plate for hopefully adoption very soon.
We won't send it back to you guys. All right, with all that, we are adjourned at 8:16.